I just recently created a framework that helps people edit so much faster and so much better than ever before. And it's not because it's super complicated and you add a bunch of stuff to it. It's really more about creating simplicity in your video. And I think most people get really overwhelmed with the idea of editing videos because it just seems like, oh my gosh, I have to add all of these things in, and I don't know how to use the settings, and I don't really know how to use editing software and some of these other like logistical things that are actually pretty easy to get over. It's really more about the composition of the video itself. If you're creating a video that fulfills a purpose without any fluff, those are the videos that actually do the best on YouTube. So I find that a lot of people who get started, especially real estate agents and mortgage professionals, they get into a YouTube channel and they get overwhelmed because they think, oh, I need to have a videographer. I need to have the best camera. I need to have all of this fancy equipment. I need to blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just an overwhelming process. And I see more and more people that get started and never actually get their first video up on YouTube. So I wanted to create a framework that made it so simple, laid it out just bare bones for people to understand that the best videos truly are the ones that are the simplest in nature. You don't need Hollywood style quality video. You don't need a videographer when you first get started. You literally just have to do this framework step by step, and your videos are going to be successful. You'll be in the top 1% of video creators in your niche, and especially in real estate and small business in general. You're going to be in that top 1% because you're following these rules. And YouTube really is just a series of formulas put together to help decipher user psychology and user behavior. It's just fulfilling a purpose and giving people what they're asking for. That's all these videos are supposed to do. So, it is fun to kind of have like beautiful videography and, all this stuff. You can still have all of that without paying for a videographer. You can do all of this yourself. So anyway, I'm blabbering on a little bit. So I want to show you the free framework. Now I do have my notes right here. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. I have some notes here. I actually have a full guide on this. So if you're a reader and writer like I am, that's down and linked in the description as well. The free framework is super easy. FREE. In fact, let me pull up my phone. Okay, there we go. Free. So FR, and my handwriting is so bad on this screen. FREE. Very, very simple. So F stands for focus. Okay. You need to have really good focus in your editing. So obviously when we're actually making the video, we actually need to have some focus, right? I've talked a lot about making sure your hook is scripted, making sure your payout is crystal clear, and that you are bulleted throughout the body of your video so that it's really easy to know where you're going with your sentences, right? You don't want to just go off the cuff completely because then you lose people and you have a 45-minute video of you blabbering, right? You don't need that. So that's the first thing, is focus. Now, the other part of focus, it really has to do with the editing because, and let me just say, a lot of times the difference between a good creator and a great creator is not so much the content they're doing, but the editing that comes out on the other side, because editing can be both the magic and the downfall of any video on YouTube. If you don't edit it the way that it should be viewed on YouTube, based on the attention span of a typical user on YouTube, nobody's going to actually find the value because they're going to hop off before they get there. So you have to make sure that you're editing, and editing is absolutely critical. It has been the reason why so many of our subscribers, like our subscriber count has gone up so much. My last video, I was talking about how we did over 1,000 subscribers in 1 week last week. And then the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been really, really close to that, which is a huge jump. We were doing 200 or 300 subscribers a week before that on average. So huge difference. We made some editing changes, and that has been making all the difference for us. So editing really determines a lot of the success of your video. It really does. So you need to make sure that every single image, icon, pop-up, it all ties together. It's all focused around a certain style. So say that you're doing like a luxury video. You're doing a luxury home. You're showing a luxury home. You can't have cartoon pop-ups come up on a luxury home. right? You need the branding to reflect the same things in your pop-ups and your pattern interrupts as you do in what you're actually talking about. So likewise, music, you don't want to have comedy music when you're walking through a luxury home. Now, again, if that's your brand, if you're kind of a comedian, that's who you are, then maybe that's appropriate. But most of the time when you're trying to show a really luxury home, say it's like a $15 million mansion that you're trying to show, it's probably not good to have some like jester music going in the background. So you need to make sure that all of your assets that go into your video are as focused as the content is. It needs to be very, very aligned and very synced. Another thing, you need to make sure that all of your pop-ups, text, all of that stuff is also tying into the payout. And, you know, I used to do theater and in theater, they always say you have to have purpose in your movement. Don't just walk to walk. Don't just like move your hand to move your hand. Otherwise it looks forced, right? We have to do the same thing with our icons and our pop-ups and things like that. Don't just throw things in there to create a pattern interrupt. Make sure that it has a purpose. So again, say that you are talking about this luxury home. Don't just show drone footage while you're showing the living room. Right? You have to have those things actually align and make sure that they make sense. You need to, you know, keep it focused. Make sure that you're driving somebody to the end of the video and not popping into a visual that we referenced 20 minutes ago, right? Okay, so make sure focus is number one. The next one is rhythm. Okay. Now rhythm has to do with a lot of different things. Pattern interrupts is one of those things. You need to make sure you're adding lots of changes throughout the video so that we're always drawing people's eye back to the center of the screen. So zoom ins, zoom outs, doing text pop-ups when you're talking about the specs of the home. If you're talking about either there's 30,000 people in this community in 1 square mile, then put that text pop up on the screen. So that rhythm, you need to make sure your pacing, your cuts, and your transitions are just moving people naturally through the video, and that you're using some of those, extra add-ins to, push people through the video and help tell the story. Another one that is really not used very much and people miss out on this, it's a huge player, is music. If you don't have music that matches the mood all throughout your video, you are going to lose a huge portion of your video, of your viewers. So for instance, I've referenced this before. It's one of my favorite references just because we all know the Kardashians, right? I've actually never watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians, believe it or not, but I have seen a ton of their clips on their, actually, I guess I probably have seen 1 or 2 episodes. It was enough to capture my attention based on the editing style. But you'll notice at the very beginning of the episode, it usually starts with like a calm, kind of collected musical track that's going on because nothing wrong has happened yet. Everybody's kind of in a good mood unless it's like a continuation of another episode, like a part 2. But nothing really has gone wrong. Well, the girls get in a fight, right? They start to kind of have some problems with each other. The music pacing starts to go up a little bit and you start to notice, okay, there's a little bit of drama in the musical score as well. Well, then it gets to the peak of their big, huge fight. And then you've got the music pacing is going really fast. It's loud. Well, then they decide to have a little heart to heart and it kind of becomes a more tender track. And then at the end, it's happy and resolved again, right? So we're talking 4 or 5 different tracks of music. Most people do not use that to their advantage. They just use some random music that they found on YouTube Library or some free music that they found someplace because it's, sounds fine. If it doesn't match the mood of the home or the location that you're showing or your personality, it's going to make a lot of people jump off because it's a psychological driver. Music is extremely powerful and most people don't even realize how important it is. And so they don't add the right types. And that's why they're losing 50% of their audience. It's crazy. So music is really important. The other thing with that, you need to make sure, again, that those visuals are really, really on point and they show up on a beat. So I'm not going to go, I'm a musical person. I grew up playing competitive piano. So, beat was really important. Keeping the pacing was really important. But what you're going to find is like every time that you're listening to a song, you can kind of go, boom, 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 right? So when you can hear that beat, you should be changing visuals on the beat, not, on some random beat that you're hearing, especially when you have like a faster paced song. It's really important to let it kind of go for a second and then change that visual as soon as you hear the beat drop. So if that makes sense, actually, I talk a lot about that in my course. But it's important to do that because it makes people feel resolved. It makes people feel like they are kind of on a train that's moving and they're just doing that and coasting along versus interrupting their train of thought because the visual didn't change where they psychologically thought it was going to change. So that's a subtle thing that you can do to make your videos look a lot more professional. Okay, and then the next one, so rhythm's really, really important. The next one is engagement. Okay, now engagement, you've got to have, again, pattern interrupts. That's what that one has to do. You have to kind of engage with your audience while you're talking, but you, as an editor, you have to also kind of create that space as well. So say, for instance, whether you're editing your own video or you're editing somebody else's video, they say, what do you think? What do you think about this? Make sure you let me know in the comments. Well, you need to have a visual that says, let us know in the comments, right? So the pattern interrupt should also be engaging the audience in another level. So let's kind of back up a couple of steps here. Oh, and there goes my phone. So let's back up a couple of steps here, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to speak to the psychological and the emotional side of somebody, and we're trying to speak to the logical visual side of somebody. We have to do both. So there's those two layers when we're editing for any type of video, whether that's a short video or a long form video that we're doing on YouTube. We're speaking to those two different types of thinking. So the psychological and the emotional side is kind of driven by these little subtle things like the music and the pattern interrupts. Whereas the visual side, we're talking more about the quality of the video, and then the logical side, the words that people are actually saying. So when we get all of those elements correct, we are speaking to people on multiple layers, and that's where that level of trust really comes out. And that's what we're trying to do as editors, not so much make a beautiful video. And that's where I think a lot of people kind of lose track of what they're doing, and they just kind of throw a video together thinking it kind of looks good. They're missing out on kind of the psychological side of video editing, and that's where the disconnect is. Okay, so the engagement is really important. Just make sure you're saying the same things as what the speaker in the video is talking about. Another really good example of this is if somebody is saying, hey, if you want to book a call with me, make sure you click the link in the description or you scan the QR code here on the screen. Make sure there's actually a QR code on the screen, right? So listen as an editor, whether it's your own videos or you're editing for yourself or for somebody else, make sure you're actually listening to the speaker and responding with elements that support what they're saying. Okay, and the last one is a lot easier. It's export. This is so important, but it's a lot easier to accomplish because it's just literally going in and making sure your settings are really good after you actually go to export your video. Now, one thing that I do think that a lot of people miss out on is with the export, you have to make sure that the quality of your export is the same frame rate as what you actually took the footage in. And so sometimes this isn't set up, just as default in your editing. I use Premiere Pro, but in your editing program, if it's not default, you have to go in and actually say, I want to export this in 60 frames per second, or I want to export this in 30 frames per second, or whatever it is that you took the footage in. Make sure that it matches, because that really contributes to a lot of export errors, and it makes it lag, it makes it crash. Like, there's so many problems that come when that's not aligned there. So make sure that your actual settings are good. Another thing that is really important to note is that you want to make sure that when you're exporting it, you're also watching the full video after it's exported, because sometimes whether, we try our very best to get a really good export, we set up our computer so that there's nothing else running and it's just this perfect environment for a perfect video. Even in the best of times, sometimes there's a little bit of a blip when you export, and then you have some blank space in the middle of the video. There's a lot of times where accidentally there's like 10 minutes of black at the end of the video. That's happened so many times. So just make sure you're actually watching the video all the way through. before you actually upload it to YouTube, because that's where you're going to see huge drop-off rates, is if there is some type of blip or an export error or a glitch or the sound goes out or something like that. Even if you've exported it before, and this is like the version 2 or the version 3, as tedious as it is, just make sure that you're actually watching the export, because a lot of times that's just where a lot of the biggest mistakes happen, and it happens to even the best creator. We oftentimes will find that the videos that do have the errors are the ones that we were just like, oh, this is like the 4th version of it, we're not going to watch again, right? One thing that you can do just to kind of alleviate the amount of time that it takes, because that can be time consuming, watch it on double speed. Like if it's like a 3rd or a 4th version and we were just making some changes or whatever, then I'll watch it on double speed just to make sure that everything looks good, because I know that all the pop-ups and things were added. It's just making sure that the export didn't fail at any point. So, but yeah, those are the main things. The free framework is so important to follow. If you do this, again, you will be in the top 1% of all creators, because most people do not follow a framework. They just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and kind of hope that something comes together at the end. Having a really solid foundation and understanding these are the 4 things that I have to have in every video. Make a little checklist for yourself. Say, am I super focused? Do I feel like I know where this video is going and I know what I'm getting out of the video? Is there good rhythm? Is there good movement? Also on that rhythm, I need to remind you, first 30 seconds need to have 2 to 3 second cuts every 2 to 3 seconds. And then after that, 3 to 5 second cuts throughout the rest of the video is ideal. So do I have good cuts? Do I have good rhythm? Do I have lots of great music in there that's also following that rhythm? Am I bringing in stuff on rhythm and not just randomly throwing drone footage or visuals or things like that in there whenever I feel like it? And then engagement, is everything that we're throwing in there talking to the audience from a visual standpoint as well as a psychological standpoint? Are we doing those things throughout the entire video from an editing perspective? And then export. Did we actually export the video well? Did we use the correct frame rate? And is it good quality? Because I will say with the export, if it's not a good quality export, it's pixely, there's little errors with it, YouTube can actually read the actual quality of the video. It can see the metadata in the background, and it will probably not push it out as far, because they like high quality videos. They like something that is going to be well received by a viewer, and a viewer is going to have a good experience watching it on any device. Now, I will go ahead and link this little guide that I created. I have a little guide on this so that you can make a little checklist for yourself. I'll link that here in the comments. And then, of course, I do have a full editing course as well. If you did want to take that, that's in the description as well. I have a free editing guide. I've got tons of free resources that will help you edit better, create better videos. So all of that is in the description below. But at the end of the day, just make sure that you are really thinking about the user, you're thinking about the viewer, and your videos will always do very well on YouTube.